Clap your hand, can you feel this vibe? Hey. Clap your hand, can you start the light? Hey. Clap your hand, can you one of a kind? Hey. Clap your hand, come sing to a foot here.
Hey, suốt đây nè niềng cả nhà, còn tai bông trong miền cả, sông chi hóa su bắn tách bàn tê. Hey, hãy đuổi công nanh mà lẽ tê, còn ta su mong con màn đại, mà này mi mê ôn phơ mình đăng. Rư ôn yên nâng bong na, rư cất thả bông mà lưu bát xa, no no, nè niềng công kết yang nâng. Rư mùi ọt chê không ai tê, song xoay tại xa kê tê đăng, mục nâng riêng nâng con khăn hái mơ tơ. Hello, now chê không ai tê, bonjour, girl you're so pretty, hey straight out, you make me crazy, hey yeah yeah. No no, nè niềng công kết yang nâng. Rư mùi ọt chê không ai tê, song xoay tại xa kê tê đăng, mục nâng riêng nâng con khăn hái mơ tơ. Hello, chê không ai tê, bonjour.
Hello, can we start? Hi, everybody. Jimdipso, Soksabai. Thank you, everybody. So many people online right now and watching us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight for this very important and much needed conversation in the Cambodian community. My name is Sarat Suong. My pronouns are he, him, his. My family is from Battambang, and I was born in a Khao Dang refugee camp. I was raised in Revere, Massachusetts, and I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island. We're here tonight because we are in such a very intense and interesting time. And while we're trying our best as a community, as families, to get together through a devastating global pandemic, the US in the past few weeks has seen the killing of Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, and George Floyd by the police. The cold-hearted murder of Black folks by the state. And as Black folks rise again to defend and protect their lives across the country through uprisings in many cities across the US, we are now forced to talk about Black Lives Matter and why they matter in our communities and in our homes. And we know that many of us are experiencing deep division within our families, that we are living with some hard feelings, some hard contradictions. And as Cambodian people, and we know that we are struggling to situate ourselves here in this moment. So here we are tonight to talk about who we are and how we move forward together as a community, as a people, to support Black lives. Tonight's conversation is brought to you by the Southeast Asian Freedom Network, or SEAFN, of which I am the national director. SEAFN is a movement family of local grassroots Southeast Asian organizations across the country. We were founded to fight against the deportations of Cambodians almost 20 years ago. And we're still committed to ending the deportation of Southeast Asians and of all people. So tonight I'm very excited to hear from our panelists. We're also a little bit nervous, so bear with us and show us a lot of love. We have five women and femme folks who are community organizers from across the country, from Long Beach to the Bronx, from Madison to Minnesota. We have folks who are willing to tell us about what their work has taught them and are teaching us about what it means to be in full solidarity with Black lives in this moment and going forward. So just a couple of things about how tonight's going to go. So we're not going to be able to right now do this, provide this and translation in Khmer or American Sign Language or have captions. We're very sorry. We put together very quickly because it's really urgent. Not that that's a good excuse, but we'll work to have live interpretation and other language access needs for next time. We will work on doing a voiceover and dub and provide captions and translation once we have the recording and send that out to the community. We encourage folks to share this, encourage people to talk to this with their families, to have these hard conversations, and to also reflect within yourself. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have, we have a few questions. We're gonna have panelists respond to those questions. And then we're gonna have a conversation about them after, during those questions. And then towards the end, we will have, we'll take a few questions from the audience through the Facebook comments. So please put your questions into the comments. We have folks. Thank you, Suchit, for looking at the questions, pulling it up, and we'll answer them as best as we can at the end. And we know we're not going to have a full conversation in an hour and a half. We know that this is just the beginning, and we look forward to having more of these and having more conversations with you all. So with that, I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves when they speak up. But I'm just going to go jump in right in and go with the first question. Y'all ready? All right. All right, so first question. So why should Cambodian folks, why should Khmer folks support the call to end anti-Blackness in this country? We're going to start off first with Chaya.
Yeah, I can go first. Thank you. ជម្រាបសួរអ៊ំពូមីងទាំងអស់កូនចៅទាំងអស់ដែលស្ដាប់ក្នុងថ្ងៃនេះខ្ញុំនឹងសូមនិយាយខ្មែរបានបន្តិចដែរនិយាយអត់សូវល្អប៉ុន្តែខ្ញុំនឹងតស៊ូនឹងខំ Hi everybody, Chaya Chow, Exec Director of Mekong NYC from the Bronx. And so to your question, Sarath, you know, I think about what it means to be in this country, to be resettled in this country, for us to even get here in the first place. And so that means acknowledging that when the civil rights movement happened in this country, there was a movement to also end the war in Southeast Asia. And you know, these are histories that we don't know about when we first arrived, and history that are usually not taught in school. And so for me, you know, understanding and knowing that when folks are marching, folks are also marching for our lives, to be able to be safe, to not be bombed by the United States. And so with that, you know, with that history, I think it is an acknowledgement of our bond forever with the civil rights movement. And it is the work of Black folks, right, in this country that really, and the leadership of Black people in this country that allow us to be resettled in this country, because they didn't want us here. And I think there's many reasons why, right? There's like all the guilt that comes with, you know, all the bombings, and particularly Cambodian, you know, as Khmer people, I think the trauma that we experience through the genocide, through the war, but also in resettlement, refugee camps. And, you know, it makes me think about the intergenerational trauma and the trauma that we all experience. And particularly, you know, the trauma of like 400 years of slavery in this country, and that when Black folks in this country are calling genocide, that we actually know what that looks like and that means. And it also makes me think about that, you know, when genocide was happening to us, no one was paying attention. And here I am, like, we wouldn't want to do this, but okay, we're gonna do it. You know, that we actually know what it means to see our family members being killed in front of our face and not be able to do anything, to steal food because we're hungry in order to survive. So I say that we actually have a lot more in common and that we've been fighting for each other. And so when we came here, we adopted, yeah, absolutely, unconsciously and consciously, right? Anti-Blackness, what it means to not like Black people, what it means to not like the color Black, right? So I think we're gonna talk a little bit about what that means in our community. But then youពេលគិតពីរឿងខ្មែរយើងដែលមានការក្រៀមក្រំហ្នឹងខ្ញុំក៏គិតថាម្ដាយរបស់ជនភៀសជនសាច់ខ្មៅហ្នឹងក៏មានការក្រៀមក្រំដូចយើងដែរហើយយើងដឹងហើយឃើញគេសម្លាប់មនុស្សនៅក្នុងមុខសម្លាប់គ្រួសារយើងនៅក្នុងមុខយើងហើយយើងមិនអាចធ្វើអីយើងមិនអាច we can't call for justice, and I think that's what it means for me to be Cambodian at this moment, and to understand that when we've been calling for justice, and so have the Black folks in this country. So if we can get justice for another community, I don't see why I would not stand in solidarity with Black folks. So that history alone, like our own history and the history of this country alone, reminds me of why it is that we need to fight for Black lives.
Thank you, Chaya. Anybody else want to jump in or talk a little bit about or answer that question?
I can go next. My name is Sheila.
Thank you for bringing us to that.
My name's Sheila, and I use she and her pronouns. I'm out here in Cambodia town, or I call it Eastside Long Beach in Long Beach, California. And yeah, I wanted to thank you, Chaya, for reminding us of like our history of resettlement. I think I wanted to speak from the perspective of being a second generation Cambodian person, and how it is that through my experiences, I've come to support this movement and to understand that our liberation, like Cambodian folks' liberation, is really tied to Black liberation too. Some years ago, I was working in South LA, which is a historically Black neighborhood in Los Angeles, and when I was working there was a young man named Zell Ford who was the same age that I was, and he was murdered by the police a few blocks away from my workplace. And of course, at the time, I felt sad. I felt sad that someone had died and was murdered. And over my years working in South LA, that sadness just deepened, right? Like I talked to a lot of the folks that I worked with told me what his death meant to them, and there were other police killings too, and I felt sad. But looking back on it, I still felt like it was a little bit far. And honestly, it felt far until I learned that there was a young Cambodian man in Long Beach that was murdered by police in 2016. His name was Barry Pratt, and I didn't know Barry personally, but when I learned about his murder and I just saw his photo, I felt like I knew him. I didn't know him personally, but I knew him, right? Like he could have been my brother, he could have been my cousin. Someday when I have children, my son could grow up to look like him. And I was overwhelmed with grief. And that was when I understood that this is how Black folks have been feeling all this time. When I listened to those stories and I felt sadness, Black folks were overwhelmed with grief, and I was feeling it in that moment. I felt like I had to do something about it. I felt like I had to get with folks and talk to folks about it. And I got together with other Cambodian folks to discuss and heal from what happened to Barry. I remember folks saying things like, you know, how come the newspaper used Barry's mugshot, you know, and tried to make him look like he was a bad person when he was the one who was murdered. There were folks who were asking, why was it that the police felt like it was necessary to kill him when he was already in custody and he was already in handcuffs? And these were the same questions that I was hearing in South LA about Black folks. And so it was really clear to me that Barry's murder was part of a pattern, right? And that's why it was that the local Black Lives Matter chapter and a local youth organization, the Youth Justice Coalition, so criminal justice folks were getting involved in supporting Barry's family. I can say that we didn't get justice for Barry. Our community didn't get justice for Barry. After his murder, the Long Beach Police Department honored a dog that was shot when Barry was murdered. They honored the dog instead. And the police that murdered Barry are still out there. So the reason why I feel called to this movement in particular is because I know this is about George Floyd. I know this is about Breonna Taylor. I know this is about Tony McDade, and I know this is about Barry Pratt too.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew. I use he, him. I work at PRISM in Providence, Rhode Island, the Providence Youth Student Movement. And I think there are so many reasons why we should be supporting Black folks and in defense of Black lives. And Chai and Sheila already mentioned a couple. And I think what I want to talk about is what I've been seeing across the country and I've been seeing in Providence. What really moves me, I think, and what I've been thinking about a lot is seeing young Black folks in the streets trying to fight, trying to protest, trying to fight for their lives, for their people. Here I'm seeing 16-year-olds getting tear gassed, seeing 13-year-olds walking towards the line of police with their guns drawn. And how could I not be moved? How could I not support these young people? We're in the streets. We're trying so hard to fight for their people, for themselves. And maybe they don't have the language to talk about it with people, but they know so well these issues, so well, in fact, that they're willing to put their bodies on the line. And I think we really have to be there for them, for these young people, because their lives matter so much.
You know, for me, it's my friends are Black. I have Black nieces and nephews, and my nieces and nephew have half Black kids. Also, too, it's, you know, we have a saying in Khmer, "Go gay, go young." You know, I look at the Black kids who are being gunned down, who are being murdered. I look at as my own child, and when my child grows up, what is going to happen to him? I have to actually sit and talk to him about him growing up, of how he will have to act around cops so that he can stay alive. Because, I mean, jokes aside, we've seen it before that Khmer people are actually the Black of Asians. And we talked about that. We've seen, you know, people posting stuff like that. And that makes me think like, yes, we're seen as the dark-skinned Asians. So if they're murdering Black people, we're next if we don't do anything. And, you know, our liberations are tied to Black people, and we need to actually help stand up, because we can't just have our Black folks fight for justice, you know, that we're actually benefiting from.
Yeah, and my name is Manta Chum, and I'm the co-founder and director of Release Minnesota 8 in Minnesota. And I just wanted to just quickly add, and we can move on, is that, you know, this year is the 45th year of the Southeast Asian diaspora, right? And, you know, that's how many years that we've been conditioned, like based on the white narrative, for our people to look at us and to look at, you know, Black folks. And I think every single one of us has all mentioned that our liberations are tied together. And until the Black people are free and they get justice, we aren't either. We just aren't as vocal about things. But to Chaya's point, in terms of, you know, when people are talking about the uprising and the looting and all of that, you think about Khmer on Khmer crimes too. I mean, when it's not okay for us to talk about Black people killing Black people, when you think about, you know, the communists and the things that happened to our people, and us just like hoarding and things like that. Like, that's something that I think so many of us, all of us in our like learning, not just from our parents, but it comes from the history and the trauma of us having that fear of not having these things because of the war and the genocide. And we aren't taught those things in our schools. We didn't learn it when we were younger, and now our kids, especially here in Minnesota, aren't getting the ethnic studies that they need to understand our culture. And so I think we have to invest in our people to be able to share and discuss these things, that Black lives matter, but it's not us saying that we don't care about our own people, because we do, but just that there's so many Black folks who are dying at the hands of white supremacy. And to Simbo, like, I have, my daughter is Black, and so like there's times where we have really hard discussions, and I worry about, you know, the next generation of our kids and how they're going to continue to suffer and what we're teaching them. So I'm sorry, I'm just going to leave it there, and we can.
Wow. Thank you, Manta. Thank you, Sambo, Chaya, and Andrew. Yeah, thank you for grounding us in the past a little bit, Chaya. I want to remind folks that, and thank you, Manta. It's 45 years since we've been here as a diaspora, and you know, part of how we were even able to come here is because of the civil rights movement. It's because of Black folks saying, end the wars in Southeast Asia and protect these folks that you've been bombing for so many years, right? And that I just want to say again, right now in this moment, Black folks are calling out genocide. And Chaya said, we know what genocide looks like. And it is our duty and responsibility as genocide survivors to make sure that we stop it. And that 45 years we've been here, we've learned quickly how to, you know, as immigrants, as refugees, we learned quickly how to we tried our best at how to try to be a part of American society. And while we know that American society is built off of slavery and the genocide of the slavery of Black folks and the genocide of Native folks of this country, that every single moment that we breathe here in the States is because we benefited from their genocide and their history as well. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is, how does anti-Blackness show up in our community? So panelists, how do you see anti-Blackness show up in our communities, in our families, in our homes? Sambo, you want to go for it?
Yeah, I can go. I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself earlier, but Sambo, she, her, hers. I'm actually from Freedom Inc. Located in Madison, Wisconsin. So I'm going to talk a little bit about colorism first before we go into anti-Black, because we actually see that happening in our own community. And what colorism is, it's a discrimination that is based on your skin color or shadyism. That's usually members of the same race, in which people are treated differently based on their skin color. You know, colorism is the base of anti-Blackness. Let's talk about that for a moment. Colorism and anti-Black, it goes hand in hand, and it's been normalized in our community for as long as I can remember. You know, we are ashamed of our skin color. You know, we're always trying to find regimens. You know, I see people always looking for creams to lighten their skin. You know, the lighter that they are, the more beautiful they're looked upon. You know, if you're born dark, like myself, I'm very dark skinned, you're already set to fail in society. You know, there's no blessings from anybody. You're looked at as ugly, lazy, violent, unintelligent. And if you're a Khmer woman, you know, you always hear parents say, you know, you'll be lucky to be married off to someone because we are not seen as beautiful. We even have nicknames like, you know, for instance, rest my mom, her nickname is Ye Mao. She's always known for that, but that's not even her name. And as I was growing up, I didn't even know what her actual name was because I always thought that was her name. That's what the community members called her. You know, we have Black nieces, nephews, cousins, like Manta was mentioning, family members who are Black. But yet we love them, but we don't love their other half, the Black community. So coming to that, choosing which Black folks to love is anti-Black. We don't do it with like the white folks that come into our community. You know, we accept the white husband, the wives, the kids that are mixed with white. We praise them. You know, we're always saying, "Con kat sauce, at na, oh, senang na, mien pray saw ជាតិមុនធ្វើល្អដឹងបានជាតិនេះបានប្តីអាជាង you know, we hear that all the time in our community, and so but with Black kids it's not like that, you know, with Black boyfriends, and we're before they even speak, we're already judging them. We're already looking at them as violent, as a threat. But white folks, we're always, they're trophy to us. You know, we see that marrying them or being with them makes us also superior too. So that brings us to how that anti-Black plays in our community. You know, it doesn't echo the same way for our Black people. We even see our Black community members talking about, oh, you have a Black husband, he'll beat you, he'll steal from you, he's using you. And some people who aren't even saying that are actually in their head also wishing upon that, so that way they can say, see, I told you, dating a Black person, this is what, you know, this is what will become of it. I mean, let's look at like family members, friends that we hang out with, you know. They're welcome into our family functions, outing, we party, we drink with them. Then on the other hand, the other Black folks who we don't associate with, we are looking at them as threatening and violent. The same people kicking it with Black friends are also the same people locking doors the moment they see a Black person, you know, walking towards the car. That's anti-Black. That is what we, that's the anti-Blackness that's in our community. And because we don't see ourselves as racist, we also don't see ourselves as anti-Black. And I think, Amanda, do you want to say something, add on to that too?
Yeah, so I'll add to that. Just to touch on you talking about like Black Cambodians versus white Cambodians. And there's, I guess for me, it would be like two different ways of saying it. One, you've already summed it up, where like, if people would look at us, I would be a white Cambodian and then you're like a Black Cambodian. And I know that it, like my sister, she's like darker. And so I remember, you know, my mom would go to Cambodia and she would come back and she would be like, you know, use this, or even myself at times when I got tan, and would say, use this white cream. It would help you, you know, to be more beautiful and to help you get white. And it was just awful feeling because I actually always wanted to get darker. But I think about like my nieces growing up and how awful it was for them to be able to hear, you know, just being really harmed in a way that I don't know if like, you know, my family was intentional about harming them or hurting them, but as they were talking to someone they trusted like me to say, you know, it was really hurtful when, you know, this uncle or whatever would call me, you know, like me Khmao, and just make those comments. But then then I have a white niece who everybody is just loving on because of how beautiful she is, because she's got like the ashy blonde hair and she's, you know, light. But then it leads me kind of to cultural appropriation in a sense, because this one white niece who everybody is uplifting and talking about just how beautiful she is the one that is really trying to pick up the hip hop culture and using the N-word all the time, and very young but still trying to drink and just like loving all of that, but then not caring for Black people, right? And so it's just very difficult to really process that. And I think a lot of folks who are watching don't really understand that those are issues that we as Khmer folks, who are the darkest Southeast Asian, also face as Khmer people. And one of the other things that I wanted to make sure I touch on as well, as far as anti-Blackness, is that, you know, a lot of things can be done through action. It doesn't even have to be with your words. For instance, like, you know, when our parents or when our family were going to specific neighborhoods and they want to make sure that they're locking their car doors or they're grabbing a hold of their purse because, you know, you're going into an area where they feel like there's more Black folks, but then you're going into another area and they're not doing that in a specific community just because, you know, they don't see a Black person. Those are all ways that anti-Blackness shows up. And those are ways that we are teaching our next generation or people around us how to react or respond when you see Black people. And so that is something that I think a lot of us have experienced growing up. And I think it is our jobs to educate, especially when we have children, to have them understand just how awful it is, because especially when we have those blended children that are mixed with Black folks, and it's just very hard. And I think to another point is that anti-Blackness, I think with all of our Southeast Asian communities, all of us have had these conversations, right? And like, it's not just a Cambodian thing, it is totally global, and that it ties into deportation and the work that Minnesota 8 does, and just the direct connection with the police and also with Black folks that just not Khmer folks or Southeast Asians or the Latin community are being deported. It is also Black immigrants that are being deported. For instance, the folks that are on the ground here in Minnesota doing a lot of the direct ground work, like the Black immigrant collectives who we partner with, a lot of their folks are being deported. And so we want to make sure that we recognize that and we talk about that, because you can't be supporting one group just because you resonate because they're your people, but you have to love all people. Like that's what we're called to do, is to love each other. Yeah, I'm gonna stop there, Chaya.
Thank you, Sambo and Manta, for that. And it's a very it's complicated, but it's not complicated too, only because we know that teaching of like what it means to be Black or just the color Black, that is taught. And I'm here to unlearn that, and all of us are here to unlearn that. And I think part of it is recognizing that, or even the term violence, like I refuse to be violent too when the men are beating our women. So violence, like we're silent when it's like, I'm calling all of us to not be silent on any kind of violence against our people. And I remember very specifically that, like we've been in this work for a very long time, and we know that the same system that criminalizes young people, that jail people, are the same system that's deporting our people as well. So let's not be you're good, you're bad. Those kinds of narrative actually doesn't allow us to be human and to be people and actually understand that we live in a white supremacist system in this country. And when I think about, I remember I've never been pained like this in my life when I've been working in the community for over 20, I guess 30 years at this point, right? And my grades are showing, or you all know that all our grades are showing. And so working with the men in our community has been one of the most hardest things for me, because I've been told over and over again that I can't be a leader. And it was one time when somebody started something new in the community, and in the temples, that all the men sit with each other and talk to each other. And at that moment, the president of the temple invited a white woman to sit in his circle and to be leader of this thing. And I was like, how can do you hate me that much? Like that you invited a white woman to sit in our circle before you invited me. So like, I understand that the pain in our community around how we lead and the violence that we experience as women, as queer folks in our community, also can't be silent in this process. So if you see in this Zoom call in itself, like these are the people that have been doing the work to free our people and to free other people. So I wanted to acknowledge and say that, to not invisible, look at me, I can't even speak English, butខ្ញុំមានឈឺការឈឺចាប់ច្រើនណាស់ដែលឃើញចាស់ដែលអត់មានការសម្លាញ់ការគោរពប៉ុន្តែឲ្យតែអ្នកសមកព្រាមគឺគោរពគេមែនទេប៉ុន្តែអត់មានការគោរពរបស់ពួកខ្ញុំមែនទេហើយពួកខ្ញុំនឹងធ្វើការ like we do this because like we love our people, and like with that I know that me loving my people means that I actually know how like Black people love their people too. So if you love your people, like love Black people, right? And so I always tell myself that I have mixed kids too, and that comes in all forms. And as they experience, and I always say, like as Southeast Asian folks, imperialism, we actually understand what that looks like, because when they were practicing guerrilla warfare in Guatemala, practicing bombing in Puerto Rico, eventually bombing us in Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos, like we are connected. So yes, we are fighting for the liberation of Black folks, but we are really, really fighting because we love our people too, and for the liberation of all of us in around the country that lives under imperialist states and the empire. So I just wanted to put that out just to say that, violence exists within our community too, and we actually have to talk about that, and that's maybe another conversation to be had, but yeah.
That'll be its own whole another community conversation. Thank you, Chaya, for always bringing the real truths. Sheila, do you have something to say?
Yeah, Manchaya, thank you for that. I think too that the reason, like, we love our folks so much, and that's why we think it's important to be calling folks in right now. I just had a few thoughts that I wanted to add. Like Monta brought up cultural appropriation, and I was thinking about how, like, what anti-Blackness looks like in our community is embracing Black culture, but not Black people. Right, so because a lot of us, like we spoke about, we grew up in the same neighborhoods as Black folks, and we listen to the same music. So like a lot of what we think of as being like Cambodian like culture right now, Cambodian contemporary culture or Cambodian culture in the US reflects that relationship to Black folks, right? Like we have, for example, a really vibrant, beautiful Cambodian hip hop and rap community that's in the US and in Cambodia, right? And we as Cambodians take a lot of pride in that, but like we have no problem taking pride in that, but we don't always want to embrace Black folks and their issues, right? Like, for example, I think Monta and Monsambo brought up a lot of examples of that. And so yeah, that I just wanted to bring up how we love Black culture, but not always Black folks, and the history of where a lot of that Black culture comes from, because we know with like hip hop and rap, those art forms in particular are Black art forms, and that they're art forms that come out of Black struggle too, right? And then I wanted to also say that, some folks might be thinking, what do my personal feelings have to do about this, right? My personal feelings about Black folks, why does that matter right now? My personal feelings did not kill George Floyd directly. And I want to say that we're calling folks in on this because right now the focus is indeed on transforming the system, in particular policing. But systems are really created and kept up by people over a number of decisions, over a number of generations. And so this call to anti-Blackness, a lot of folks feel really overwhelmed because we're calling on folks, we're trying to change those systems, but also we need to change the attitudes too that carry out and keep up those systems. And so it creates two openings for what we as individuals can do right now. And that first opening is to be part of the movement to transform the system. And we see right now that it's really working. We see that we see the power of mass movement in this country, unlike we've ever seen in recent history. And we've already made huge wins as a movement. Like, for example, the Minneapolis public schools ended their contract with the Minneapolis Police Department. And there's been other wins across the country that are starting to take out investment in police. And I think it's really likely that we would not have gotten these wins if it wasn't for the mass movement that we see right now. And then the other opening is really what I was saying earlier about transforming our hearts and minds, because this system is carried out through individuals.
Thank you, Sheila. Yeah, so colorism is very real in our community. It's become part of our culture. It's become how we talk to each other, how we treat each other, the names that we give each other. We all have someone named Kamau in our families or in the neighborhood, right? And we see how our family treat Black folks and white folks so differently, right? Even in our families. And, we also have this thing where if it's in the family, it's okay, right? Oh, I'm cool with this, with my cousin's Black husband, but I'm gonna lock my door when I see a Black person walk down the street, right? Just because you have Black friends and family does not mean you're anti-Black, right? And the other, yes, the cultural appropriation piece. I know that for me personally, thank you, Sheila, for bringing that up. I think it's happening. It's been happening here in the U.S., but it's also happening like globally to all Cambodians around the world, right? And that we cannot, I'm calling on us as consumers of Black music and culture. And then also all for the creatives, the artists, the rappers and the singers to also please take a stand that you cannot just be making money and getting fame from Black music and stay silent right now while Black folks are being killed. We have to stand up. And the
Yeah.
other piece for me is with all of this, it's kind of like, you know what, even if Black folks did not advocate for us to come here when we were refugees,
Right.
even if they didn't do that, even if anything, that we can't just perform, like we can't just hashtag Cries for Black Lives. We actually have to act. And that even if Black folks did nothing, that we have to see the humanity in a group of people saying we are getting killed. Please help us, because we know how that felt like Chaya said earlier. So so for me, it's also like we really have to think deeply and think more about like what do we do as we have to look into the humanity of it all, but what do we do as a people when another person is telling us and showing us that they need our help. All right. Wow.
So I can add to that, and I think I know
Yes,
Tida
please.
have a lot more time because Tida hasn't signed. But I mean, one of the things I would call on us as Khmer people also is like to actually recognize that, like we say, people love Black culture, not Black people. Like there are Khmer people who love Khmer culture, but not Khmer people as well. So like I know some of us bought the yoga, the Buddhism from some white folks, right? So I call upon all of you to learn what it means to actually love our people from the eyes of your parents, from the eyes of your own reflection in the mirror, right? And not like just love our culture because someone taught you to love your culture. So that's what it makes me think about, as we even talk about what we feel about ourselves and who we are and what we are as people. We are giants. And I think that as we call for justice, and I've said this before, which is that, healing is a lifelong process. And I know the trauma that our community experienced is lifelong, it's intergenerational. So 400 years of Black folks with this kind of trauma, I can imagine how many generation is going to take to undo. So for me, knowing that healing is a lifelong justice, but that healing is a lifelong process, and that actually justice will come one day. And if it comes for the Black people tomorrow, I'm with it. So all of us as Khmer people need to be with it. So I mean, and that's the center in which I believe that we need to move as people, and pass that to our generation, our young people, our kids, and everyone else that comes after us. And even some of the old folks that come before us, they need to learn too and unlearn too.
Absolutely. Does anybody else want to add on to this before I move on to the next question? Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, so the next question. How do we work in solidarity in this moment? How do we work in solidarity and in defense of Black lives? What is being asked of us in this very moment on how we should be moving forward?
I think there are a lot of ways that we have already worked in solidarity with Black folks. We've seen that at Freedom Inc., which is a Hmong Khmer and Black organization working in deep solidarity with each other to build a better and safer community. We've also seen that here in Providence with the Community Safety Act, which is one of the most comprehensive pieces of legislation in the country that addresses racial profiling by the police. And this was a labor of love and was a hard-fought victory to pass that took Cambodians, Black folks, and other communities working together. One of the things that the CSA, the Community Safety Act, specifically addresses is the gang database used by the Providence Police. And it was actually one of the primary reasons PRISM was founded was because young Cambodian people in our community were really, really pushing for people to address this issue that was actively harming and criminalizing them. And other young people in other communities, like Black community. And what was happening was the police were profiling people to be put in a database of gang members under the mere association with gang members, such as having a gang member in your family, being seen in a picture with them, or even just living in the same neighborhood. And the passing of the CSA made this practice illegal, although we still have evidence that the police are still doing this in secret. So while this was a really, really beautiful way in which Cambodians worked in solidarity with Black folks and other communities of color, I'd like to challenge us to push even further. I think now is the time to push for more legislation and take it a step forward and support the demands of Black organizers that are calling for things like the divestment of the police. And I have learned a lot, from MPD 150 has done some really great work, and I've learned a lot from what they've been sharing. And the divestment of police is part of a really long process towards abolishing the police and prisons. And so what folks are pushing for is divestment of resources from the police and reallocating those resources towards community-centered systems of safety. So in response to community problems, we can have people best equipped to deal with them instead of strangers with guns who are most likely from outside of our communities. And this feels particularly important to reallocate resources right now during the time of COVID-19, where our communities and communities across the country and across the globe are struggling for resources. And here in Providence, the budget of the police is 88 million, while the budget, which just dwarfs, and the budget of other programs here really pale in comparison. Like Public Works is 24 million, and yeah. And so what people here and people across the country are calling for is one of the things is the reallocation of this money and these resources into community-centered solutions that can better serve us and keep us safe physically and emotionally. And some of that work here for the past 2 years is youth from PRISM, from Arise, from Providence Student Providence Student Union, and other youth of color have been pushing for the Counselors Not Cops campaign to get police out of schools, which criminalize them on a daily basis, and instead have counselors to better support their mental health. And so this is the call of young people. And we really need to, I think, respect what young people are asking for because they know their experience best. And yeah, so I think we really need to support them on that.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for uplifting the ways that, especially our young folks, have been working in solidarity with Black folks. And I think for me, it shows us that we've been doing this. It's not against our interest in a lot of ways. But I want to take a second now to step back and directly address a challenge that's coming up in our solidarity for Black folks that centers around my neighborhood in Cambodia Town in Long Beach. I want to start by saying that I understand why so many folks in our community are upset about the damage in Cambodia Town that has resulted from the uprising. I can agree that it is upsetting. Long Beach has significance for me because it's my actual neighborhood. Like I'm here right now. And not only am I here, but I had to really fight to stay here too, because a lot of folks in our community are being forced out of Cambodia Town because of rising rents and unaffordability. My whole family, for example, moved out of Long Beach into Arizona about 3 years ago. So we know that that's happening. And why I fought to stay here is because this community is so special to me because we have the largest Cambodian community outside of Southeast Asia. I love being able to walk outside of my house and say hi to all the yais, thas, ma, like all of the Cambodian folks that I see just in my neighborhood. I can say that there's no other place like this for Cambodian folks. And I know it's important to our diaspora in that way. What I love most about Cambodia Town is the people. Right now, not just our community, but many immigrant communities are struggling to figure out how to talk about this because it presents a major challenge for our solidarity. In these current times and this current system, we are pitted against one another. And as a result of that, we want to withhold our solidarity because of because of damage in Cambodia town, that's an example of being pitted against one another. The reason for me that I think it's important that we move past this is because I really believe that this moment and this movement that's happening right now is going to create a better world for all of us. And I think, you know, how Andrew spoke about the CSA, that's an example, right, about how we benefit from that too. And that promise for me is bigger than anything. And I know that the Cambodian community that I love benefits from that too. I want to take notice too that there's a number of different patterns that we're seeing. It's a really complex issue, right? One pattern that we're seeing is like for a lot of the business owners in Cambodia town, we have even back from the war to now, we have a cycle of like material things being taken away from us, right? Like our community lost all of our material things in the Khmer Rouge, and that might be how it feels right now too, knowing that there's damage in this place that is important to us, that we're seeing material damage. Another pattern that we're seeing is that, you know, in the Vietnam War, for example, Cambodia tried to stay neutral. And now in this country's war on Black bodies, many folks in our community, they want to stay out of it. They want to stay neutral. Not only should we not stay neutral, but we see that it's not even possible to stay neutral, right? Neutrality is not an option. Another cycle that we see is that some of the very businesses that were damaged in Cambodia town were also at risk of being priced out, just like I talked about how people are being priced out of our community. I know this because a number of the businesses that were damaged were in the Anaheim Atlantic Plaza in Long Beach, and our community had been organizing around to support businesses in that plaza because the property owner wanted to redevelop because the property had become more valuable. And coming back to people again, the reason why that property became more valuable is because we brought that value to the community, right? And now, and so the owner wanted to take that value and make more money off higher end tenants. Another thing that we noticed too is that some folks were really disappointed that the businesses were not protected by the police, right? They expected police to protect businesses, the Cambodian businesses. In Long Beach, there's examples of the Long Beach Police Department trying to protect businesses in more rich neighborhoods. And for me, this is an example of how the police don't actually keep us safe. What's actually going to keep us safe is building a better world together. So I want to remind folks that, you know, the loss of property in a lot of ways is temporary, but the loss of life is not. George Floyd cannot breathe. Breonna Taylor didn't get to celebrate her 27th birthday yesterday. So I don't mean to minimize the loss of property. That's unfortunate, but I ask that we really think about this, and I hope that our community gets to a place where we are equally, I hope actually more upset about the loss of life and the loss of property.
And I will add that until we are in a Black body, we cannot tell Black folks how they protest, how they demand for justice. And so, you know, Mekong NYC have been doing the work of understanding what it means to, we've always said that the Southeast Asian movement for social justice in this country is at the intersection of healing and organizing. And what that means is we have to come to terms and figure out what justice means for us. And for us, justice is healing, you know? And so when I think about the call for justice in the Black community, that is a call that I'm coming to way before we came to this country, right? And that we're all still trying to look for in our community and in our lives. And in, you know, I think about, you know, those community members and our brothers and uncles who experience PTSD, the constant like dreaming of violence and loss. And so, no one can tell us what justice means. So we should not be telling Black folks how they should protest, what justice means for them, and how they're gonna get it. So until then, like I said before, I am support in anyone who finds justice the way they wanna find justice. And until we're in Black bodies, we stand by and we support and we move and gather our people. I mean, I know like the Hmong folks have always said, and Kajra, who is at Freedom Link, always says, go get your damn people, right? And so we're gonna get our people, and we're gonna, and the reality is that some of us may be left behind and some of them may come. And so I ask all of you to come with us and even bring our parents too, because we know what it feels like to find justice and still looking for justice. And again, if we can find justice for another community, I say I'm all in it.
Thank you, Chaya.
Yeah, and I just, yeah, thank you for that, Bongchaya and Shilla. You know, I wanted to just add about, you know, folks talking about the riots and the looting and things like that. And what folks, we as movement leaders have been calling it uprising, because that's what we feel is happening right now. And I just wanted to share a quote from MLK. I feel like it really fits in this, because so many people out there constantly quote this man who was also murdered at the hands of white supremacy. And he wrote, he said, "And I must say tonight that a riot is a language of the unheard." So when we think about our communities who are getting really upset about what's happening in Long Beach or what's happening here on the ground in Minnesota or everywhere, and then want to blame it on Black folks, that you have to think about this quote, because again, he says, "I must say tonight that riot is the language of the unheard. Black folks have been oppressed for so many years, and that's why this uprising is happening." And so what it is America has failed to hear. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that at large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice and humanity.
Thank you, Manta, for that reminder. Yeah, Sambo, do you want to share with us about how you are organizing and doing that in Madison?
Yeah, and first I just wanted to say quickly, because I know a lot of us are trying to reach out to our own people on social media, and some of us are getting backlashes, and a lot of it is saying, why aren't you standing up for us? You know, why aren't you loving our people? And that's the thing. It's that we, just because we stand with Black folks, Black lives, and because we love Black lives does not mean we love our people less. I want to make sure that echoes out, that we do this because we love our Khmer folks so much. And what Freedom Inc. has been doing, like this whole week has been Action Week, and a lot of our Black youth has been out in the street protesting. We've been celebrating the lives of all the Black people that have been murdered. And I use the word murder a lot because I want people to see that even though the cops are doing this, it doesn't justify anything. And so I want people to really think of it that way. That's why I've been using that word a lot, because a lot of that is happening because it is murder, you know. We're reaching out to people. We're making sure we're not staying silent, because silence is actually part of the problem. You know, for us Khmer folks, staying silent, look what it got us. You know, we weren't able to fight back. And I think if we could do it all again, I'm sure everything would be different. And I know that everybody is, you know, they have their own opinions, and I definitely hear you, I see you. But sometimes we have to take a step back and look at, if our opinions are actually causing more harm, is that something that we should speak out on? Or should we take in, or should we research more and reach out to Black organizers? So with that said, what we're asking, what FI is asking for folks to do is stop showing the videos that show Black crime. You're actually putting more violence as you're doing this. Acknowledge that Black community is disproportionately impacted. And direct our anger at systems. Like, don't direct it at us. If you're angry at us, you actually should look into the system. The system has been pinning us against each other. And they've done it from the start of resettlement. And the solutions that don't use criminal justice systems, like not having cops in school, defund the police, and stop being used as a pawn, model minorities. Address the leaders, you know, call your governors, your mayors, you know, write them letters. Don't just put these emojis or hashtags. Like, we want you to show some actions that is the only way that we can make a change and educate ourselves and our community on anti-Blackness. We spoke on that earlier. If anyone wants to reach out to any one of us, you know, we're willing to have open conversations. And then also to stand in solidarity with Black people as they're mourning and fighting for Black lives.
Wow, thank you, Sambo. Y'all are doing that work right now in the Midwest. Thank you. Manta, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add, as Simbo was talking, I was just thinking about how, you know, even Minnesota 8, when Simbo was talking about how people do question our love for our people, our Khmer people, because we're fighting for Black lives. And I think all of us have heard the statements, well, all lives matter. I think we've heard that too often. And the reason why we say we love our people is because we in fact love our people. Like, I got into this work because of my love for my people, fighting, you know, on the ground for 8 Khmer men who were going to be deported, and Black lives showed up for us. You know, the Black Lives Movement, like, they showed up for us, and they were there, and they were willing to put their bodies at risk for us, even though they knew that they were the ones firsthand getting messed up by the police. And so I just wanted to make sure that I added that, because Black people, they always show up. And so we can't sit there and say that we're not anti-Black and then don't allow us or don't love them. But then when we need them, that's when we want to love them, when they show up for us. And so again, I say that when we say that Black lives matter, it's not to say that we don't love our people, and that it's not to say that all lives don't matter. It's we're fighting for Black liberation because we are all tied together.
Thank you, Manta. Okay, Andrew, last one on this piece, and then we gotta go. I want to go to the questions and answers from the crowd. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about you know, what's going around the country and in here in Providence, and thinking about the property damage, the looting, the rioting, the uprising, and how people have been talking about it. And so, like, last week, there were people who were out, and a lot of windows were smashed, and things got looted and things like that. And then, you know, a lot of people in our community were talking about these violent protesters. And I think I want to think, or like ask about how we think about violence, because the people that were there were young people, a lot of young people. And yeah, they damaged property, but I'm questioning why we are labeling them violent as unarmed people who are finding whatever is around them to smash windows, to take property, versus the police, who are trained, grown people, equipped with full combat gear, with riot shields, with tear gas, with pepper spray, with rubber bullets, with rifles, and all of these tools that are actually used to harm human bodies. And so, yeah, I think I want to focus on that, and that those things were used and are being used to hurt people, to enact violence upon their bodies, and that's the violence that I want us to focus on.
Great, Chaya.
No, I mean, I just want to add that, like, also, like, you know, when we see protesters, and like what you said, Andrew, just it makes me think about how like that, why we need to defund, right? Because and divest, because like police are being called for social issues, and so, and what they have, the weapons that they have are not a violent weapon, handcuffs, like tear gas, guns. So you're asking a present that is already violent to deal with social issues, whether it's homelessness and of our young people, our trans queer folks, you know, like we can't have that kind of society no longer. That is violent.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to move us on to sort of answering some questions from the audience. But I just want to remind folks that in talking about how do we move forward, where do we go from here, SEAFN, the Southeast Asian Freedom Network, is hosting these conversations because one is really important, but also to help amplify the Move for Black Lives work that's happening right now. First and foremost, we know that we will always follow Black leadership in this current moment. And they are, and during this, we're at the tail end of the Move for Black Lives Week of Action, defending Black lives. And in this week of action, they're asking for these particular demands. They're asking that the rights of protesters be respected. They're asking for there to be a divestment from police and an investment in Black communities. They're asking for immediate relief for communities of color, particularly Black communities who are hit hardest by the COVID, by COVID and by the coronavirus. They're demanding community control over the police, and to demand an end to the war against Black folks. And so, in particular, the coalition that we're in, the Rising Majority, they are pushing forward for a campaign to defund police departments across the country, and to also call for the resignation of Trump, of our 45th president. And of course, as we know, Black folks are disproportionately affected by COVID and by the coronavirus, and that Black communities in this moment need support and immediate relief from the virus. So folks who are listening, before we go to the questions, please, right now, go to defendblacklives.org to sign a pledge, to get updated, to get information. Take out your cell phones right now and text 90975, 90975 for action alerts. And lastly, let's move some of our money to the current movement for Black liberation. Go to www.m4bl.org. www.m4bl.org. Sheila?
No, I was just saying it's the number 4.
Oh yeah, sorry. M4bl.org. Thank you, Sheila. Okay, so we are having some questions that can be coming from the audience throughout. Thank you, Suchit, for helping to curate those. First question that I want to ask the panel is, how do we have a conversation today? How do we have a conversation about today's issues, about all these issues, without overstepping the respect for our parents? I don't want to come off as I know more than you and you need to listen to me. I think that's actually a really honest, real question. And it's something that we have to contend with in our families. So how do we have a question about today's issues without overstepping the respect for our parents? Think about it for a few seconds. And if anybody want to start, please go ahead.
I'll go first. I think, you know, for our elders, they always tell their stories of what happened during the genocide. So you know they want to be heard. So I think, you know, you should continue having those conversations, talking to them, having them tell their story, and you can bring these points, you know, that are happening now. You know, just I think you have to ease into it with our elders, because we do know that a lot of our folks have PTSD. So yeah, having these conversations, just have them tell them their story of what's going on, so that then you can relate these issues.
Yeah, to Sambo's point, I think it's actually, you know, one of the things that I am, as young folks who came here, privileged to do, is actually to be able to and you know, our community members and our elders have kept these secrets, and these secrets kept them alive, right? During the Khmer Rouge, you don't know where I work for, where I work from, so that you know that I'm not an artist, you know, so that so that they won't kill me. So I think that part of this is like uplifting the secrets that our communities have lived through. And I can imagine, you know, one of the conversations I had with my uncle actually, you know, I was asking him about growing up here and like just what the difference is because he came when he was like 17. And so he knew what it was like to live in Cambodia, and he knew what it was like to live, you know, in the United States. And I also know that, you know, as he was trying to rebuild, he was also surviving, right? So like acknowledging and recognizing that you know, you know, and like to survive and just and with nothing. And so, you know, we had no marketable skills. So I think it's a recognition of us just to say, I know, I can imagine, and I know what it must have been like to raise 5 kids, working in the factories, in the nail salons, 2-3 jobs, not speaking English. So I know that the suffering that you experience is a suffering that no one should ever experience as people. So I think it's always a moment for us to ask, to learn. Actually, there's a lot of lessons from the Khmer Rouge, and there's a lot of love stories during the Khmer Rouge, and there's a lot of stories of resistance. And I think we haven't captured it as young people yet. Because for me, as a Khmer organizer, a Khmer feminist in this country, I know that their stories is going to only uplift and shine a light to my vision for justice for all of us and all of our vision for justice. So I say, yes, Sambo, you're absolutely right. Ask, call on your parent, call them in to have conversations. They know how to survive, and they have survived. And acknowledge that, because their survival came from all levels: interpersonal violence, gender-based violence in our community, right? And so it is a very complicated, but also very easy way for us to just acknowledge and ask them to speak their truth. And just like all the Black folks on the street are speaking their truth, we can also speak our truth in those moments, right? And that, for example, like our work in the Bronx, like around gentrification, we always share with our people around what it means to be refugees, that we're gonna always be refugees. And that we actually understand what it means to fight gentrification, because we've been displaced too many times. And so part of us bringing in our parents and is bringing their stories into the local fights, right? Against gentrification, against policing, against, you know, shutting down of mental health services for our community members. Do you know that when we were fighting for the closing of a health center, like one of the staff told me, it's been 30 years. Y'all still need this mental health clinic? And I literally wanted to throw something across him, but there was other people that held me back. So thank goodness for that. Thank goodness for that. Charlie's not in jail. But, you know, is to just say that our stories actually of injustices can be taken from the lessons that our people learn. So our elders had a lot to say, and so does our young people. And I know, as my generation, the 1.5 who I was born in Cambodia, I know that my role is to continue to bridge those and give those lessons to be passed on.
Thank you. Can I have one more response to this, if folks want to, before I move on to the next question? Thank you, Chaya. Okay. All right, the next one is just something I'm going to ask, because I'm sure all of us across the board have seen this kind of thing be raised, and a lot of the questions are actually sort of around this issue. How can we explain to Khmer folks who have suffered from violence by Black folks that we were living with and placed with as refugees in the 80s, that we need to stand for Black lives? Right. So, and another part that I always hear in that on social media, what do you say to Asian folks who explain, where was the Black community when Asians were being attacked for COVID? Right. What is all y'all's response to that? Okay, so the question is, what do you say to Asian folks, to Cambodian folks who say, where was the Black community when Asians were being attacked for COVID? I know my cousin, my friend and stuff were attacked by Black folks who thought they were spreading COVID everywhere. So how do we talk to Black folks who suffer violence also by Black folks? By Khmer folks who suffer violence by Black folks.
I mean, if you're gonna call on Black folks, you're gonna have to call on white people too, and you're gonna have to call on all the institution that takes away from our community, that takes away from our young youth programs, that takes away from our senior program, that takes away food stamps, right? So I think that like we get to say what happened. Like, why haven't people come out? Well, why, like, our silence on certain, like, we can't choose when to be silenced, right? So I'm actually asking folks to actually rethink around like what it means for us to actually, who are the real looters, right? Who are the real thieves in our community? Who's actually doing the harm? Who's actually placing us in community so that we fight, right? For like when we were resettled, the communities that we were resettled in, and I want to speak from my community in the Bronx was literally burning. It was complete divestment from any institutions, from elected officials, and you put us in a place where there were already violence, there was policing, there were high crime. So what do you expect, right? So for me, it's not about why didn't they show up, but just to say that no one has really shown up for Black people either. Like, we can have that conversation around why you didn't show up, but at the end of the day, like, the killing of Black people, of Black bodies, is also part of the disinvestment, whether it's in the COVID response, right? Whether it's in the response around displacement and things like that. So it's hard to say that why people don't show up for us when we actually don't show up for ourselves sometimes in our own people. So I want us to recognize that too. And actually to say that when we uplift, why is this violent? Well, why this is not violent? You know, like why is bombing not violent, right? Of whole countries not violent? And why is like why isn't poverty violent, right? And so, and I want to bring this back to the point what I spoke about in the beginning, which is that, you know, when my uncle told me that he stole in order to feed my mother when my mother was pregnant, like when there's a pandemic and you don't have, and when who are you to judge when we are hungry, right? When people are poor. So yeah, we do have a problem in this country on poverty. And so I feel like when we call out to communities and say, why haven't you showed up? Why haven't you showed up? Like, we're all here. And so the call is to all show up all the time for each other.
I just wanted to add that, like, it wasn't just Black folks during the beginning of, you know, the COVID, and we were getting attacked from the anti-racist sentiments against Asian folks was coming from all over the place. I mean, I live in a predominantly white community. I came from the hood, but where I'm at now, and I've been living here for 5 years, and having my daughters tell me that they're hearing, you know, people under their breath talking about, you know, Asians and things like that, as if my kids who are just taking a walk around their neighborhoods are have COVID, you know. And so those are, I mean, does that mean though that like that we don't show up for Black lives because you, maybe one or two of you were being attacked by Black folks who said that you're carrying COVID-19, you know? And so we can't sit there and just point fingers all day at each other. We just can't do that. We have to be able to just put that aside and just have courage to really just speak up and show up for each other. To Chaya's point, like during our campaign, it was so difficult to get Khmer people to even show up for trying to you know, to be in solidarity to free Khmer folks, because they'll say stuff like, well, they committed, you know, these crimes, and so they deserve to be deported. But that's not true. Like, these were men who already served their time, and now they're getting ready to be, or almost being sent off to a country that they've never been to. And so, and I also want to bring up Sambo's points when she talked about what FI is currently doing right now is like, we have to remember to direct it back to the systems, like not to each other, to systems of white supremacy. That's where all of this is coming from. And for all of us to look through the lens of each other through white supremacy, because none of us was taught about any of this in our schools.
Wow.
And the
Thank
idea
you.
and the idea that somehow materials is more important than people is a capital, like that we live actually in a capitalist society where the anti-blackness and racism need to exist in order to thrive, needs to call, like protecting people before property. Like, I think that's another conversation we have to have around capitalism and racism and how it's all tied together, and like the oppression of women in that and of queer folks. So I just wanted to acknowledge that you know, this also makes me think about, like, we live in a capitalist society, and that where it is about the cars you have, or, you know, the sneakers you wear. So yeah, we've been taught this, like we've been taught to stay in your lane, right? Sheila?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Monsambo had said earlier and what Monta was just saying. Monsambo said one of the ways that we can, you know, stop practicing anti-Blackness in our communities is to stop sharing these videos, right? And I was just thinking about how Monsambo's organization, Freedom Inc., had shared like that we need to question the virality, the fact that folks were so quick to share these images, right, of Black folks harming Asian people in particular. And I think that they had like a really great like reason for why that might be. Why is it that we instinctually wanted to share these things and make it viral, make it seem like this was happening so often? And what Freedom Inc. said was, one, these videos are perform racial stereotyping of Black and Asian Americans in a time of instability, fear, and death in order to, one, maintain the belief that Black people are inherently violent, two, redirect the flow of outrage away from institutional failures and racist leaders. So take the anger away from systems and start directing them at individuals. And three, uphold white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism.
Can I add one thing too? I know we
Yes.
want to talk about what happened with COVID, you know, and if we're going to speak about the violence, the black violence, then we also should talk about the violence within our community, the violence within our homes, you know, husband, wife, children, you know, those violence that's happening now in our Khmer community, that we actually stay silent. So what right do we have to keep all that violence silent in our community, but speak out on Black violence? And then, you know, we talk about addressing the anger, like Sheila said, to the system. I mean, why was it that Blacks, but not just Black, but white folks were hating on Asians? Who is it that was addressing this? Wasn't that the president that called it a Chinese flag? I mean, that's what people are forgetting, is that who is actually putting this fear out. And what fear is the first emotion that we feel. And after fear, what comes after that? So that's something I think people have to see, but they're not seeing that. They're just seeing that Black violence. And the Black violence is actually, you're perpetuating that by always reposting. And that's what we're saying, is that stop doing that. Because if it's one incident, everybody is actually judging the whole Black community.
Just real quick, Andrew said it earlier, but who really can commit violence? Individuals or systems?
And actually that, you know, that I know the like Freedom Inc. is like an organization we all look to, just so you know, Ms. Sambo, and all the other 8 organizations in SEAFN. So I know we're gonna have to give the shout out to all the 8 organizations that exist in our network. And so, or that who's really hurting you? Like who is really oppressing you? Like, you mad at the wrong people. You're mad at the wrong people. So I like this. Like, this pissed me off. I'm going off. I told Pang I wouldn't, Master Pang, I told you I wouldn't go off. But I'm serious. It's like all your energy of anger, I need y'all to like redirect that somewhere else to build people and build community, because you mad at the wrong people.
I think even right now, those wrong people they're even seeing this because this is like the most horrific, like violence, police killing that we've ever seen. We watched a person suffocate, right? And so I was just at this protest this last Tuesday, and to hear it was put together by a bunch of high school students. And one of the things that I remember hearing one of the speakers say, again, they're all high school students, actually said, I see a lot of white people here, and I'm not gonna thank you for being here. Like, it was like, whoa, she was like, you need to be here. Like, you should have been here, you know, for a long time. And I think that now those individuals who may have been quiet and silent and hadn't said anything, they're finally recognizing and seeing, but there's still just so much more that needs to be done. And they need to really differentiate the difference between like the whiteness and the white supremacy, and not take offense to everything that we as organizers are saying when we talk about the systems and like white. I just wanted to really make that clear because people really don't understand that. And I think that also is to the point of like our Khmer communities and our Khmer people, when we talk about that too, is really having them understand that it's the system in itself, right? And so I just wanted to make sure that, I just wanted to add that point because it is so prevalent right now that we've seen so many people who have been silent that are finally, when it should have been done many, many years ago as well.
Thank you, Manta. Chai, did you have something to add, or I'm gonna go try to get through last thoughts?
Real quick, I just wanted to share, you know, like just, it makes me think about like gender-based violence in our community, you know, like our people, like they always tell the women, well, you keep choosing the wrong men. Like, why are we telling people to stop choosing the wrong, like tell men to be better men, that's one, right? And stop blaming on alcoholism and drinking as an excuse for you beating your wife, because you could have beat the Quen, you know what I'm saying? But you're gonna come beat your wife. So go beat Anuani. You know what I mean? Like, come on, you know, why con chow, khang kni why con chow, but on Việt Đăng thay vai này na kê. Vì vai propon vì vai con, hay maybe the vai Quen, no? You know what I'm saying? Like, I just want us to just recognize that, yo, like our people, like we got work to do too. So not just about anti-Blackness, but like gender-based violence and all that stuff in our community. We have to speak up to those things too, right? Hey, so go ahead. That's it. My ranting is over.
Alkun Chram, Chaya. Thank you, Alkun. Okay, so I just want to wrap up, but before that, I just want to ask the panelists just to give us some last thoughts. Couple, like 1 or 2 sentences. Give us your last thoughts on the matter, and then we'll close up and wrap up this really amazing and beautiful conversation. So if you're ready, anybody can start. I see Andrew, you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I want to thank Chaya for always bringing it back to our stories, and it has me thinking that I often don't think of them as a young person, as a young Cambodian person, and I actually know very few stories. But the stories that I know, the stories that I've heard, are the ones where family members steal food to help other children, to help their family members. And I think that's so amazing that those are the stories that I've heard of how far our people are willing to go to protect each other. And I think about like how beautiful it is that Black folks are willing to do whatever it takes to get their people free. And yeah, that's just what I want to say.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.
I'll go next. I want to recognize that these conversations are really hard. I think what this political moment brings for a lot of us is we're forced to have the conversations, and we're both forced to have the conversations, and we're also able to have conversations in ways that we never were before. So like, firstly, listen. Like Monchai and Andrew were just saying, right? Like, our folks are, especially the older generation, they have stories that really connect to this too. And our folks know the right thing, right? It's a matter of redirecting their anger and their energy to the right targets. So for folks who are trying to have the conversations, you might not get there like that first conversation around, but we got to keep having the conversations. And right now is really that moment. Neutrality is not an option. It's not okay to stay quiet.
This is the moment. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you.
For me, yeah, I agree with what Sheila is saying. This is the time to speak out. I know I've been hard on a lot of folks on social media, and it's not because I don't love you less. It's because I love you so much, and I know the resilience that my folks have been through, and we can do better. We have been through it. We have been there. I mean, this is the time for us to come together, to teach each other. There is so much that we can do. Like, reach out to the Black leaders, your Black-led organization. Ask them what you can do. Please don't just stay behind your phones, your laptop, do something. We really need you guys to put in some action.
Yes, don't just love and don't just do solidarity. We have to solidarity has to be a verb for us in this moment. Thank you, Sambo. Manta?
Yeah, so I want to just say that we have to defund the police. And as an organizer whose biggest thing is deportation, anti-deportation work, we have to also defund ICE. We need to make those calls to have the federal government do that. And then to my Khmer people, I just want to say, you can either stand up, sit down, you can lift your voice, or you can be quiet. It's your choice. But you know that there is a consequence for both. And one of that will bring change and one of it will do nothing. And the ball is in your court. So to all my Khmer people who have been watching, you need to speak up, because the time is now and we need to do this.
I think I'm the last.
Thank you, Manta, for that call to action.
I'm not gonna pop.
Go ahead, Chaya.
Chaya's in her zone now. So thank you for allowing the space. And I think that, as we were prepping this, I know we were all nervous, I know we were all scared, but that's because, again, I think that we love our people so much that we're willing, all of us, right? And part of the SEAFN network is to make a moment into a movement. And we've been doing that for 20 years. And I hope that folks who are listening, who are watching, find the organization in your, in your states. And we only have 8, but reach out to Sarath, who's our national coordinator. Connect to organization, connect to collective, to people so you don't feel alone. And so we love our people and we hate white supremacy, we hate capitalism, we hate imperialism. Sarath, I'll give it to you now.
Thank you. Okay, Chaya. Thank you all, the great panelists. I just want to say a few things before we officially close. I want to thank the panelists. Y'all amazing and beautiful. I want to thank Neri and Tida, Sochit, and June for helping us on the back end. Thank you all. I want to thank the Southeast Asian Freedom Network, Mekong NYC in the Bronx, New York, Viet Lead in Philadelphia, Prism in Providence, Man Forward, and Release Minnesota 8 in the Twin Cities. We have Freedom Inc. in Madison, we have Fight in Seattle, and we have Khmer Girls in Action in Long Beach. Those are the 8 organizations right now who make up the amazing and beautiful, powerful SEAFN network. And I want to say that that this is just the beginning for us as a community to begin really talking about this. We were nervous, but we knew that we had to have this community with this conversation with you all, because we love you all, and because we love Black people, and we know that we can use this love to transform and to move forward and to push ourselves and each other towards the side of justice and towards Black liberation. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Look out for more information, look out for more conversations, and please stay safe out there, but please also remember to stay brave, to be brave as well. Thank you all.
Good
Good night, everybody.